We've taken the Premier League, but we've changed one very important thing. If you're over the age of 20, you have to retire. Except we can't make them retire. What we can do is change the rules of the registration of the Premier League so that you can't be over 20 if you're gonna play. Every Premier League match only contested by players 20 and under. That's how you end up with James McAtee third for the Premier League's best average rating through 6 matches. But there is one twist. Since we can't retire the guys, we figured we'd give each club one player over 20. Wait, seriously, here are the registration rules. You have a maximum of 1 over 20 player. That's it. And after those 6 matches, it is rather annoyingly Manchester City that is running top. You see, they were losing their opening match early against Tottenham after a wonderful goal from Lancashire. But then in the 74th minute, it was McAtee that headed the ball home and Oscar Bob who slotted the winner. Then they beat Everton with goals from Rico Lewis, Farid Alpha Ruprecht, and Jaden Heskey. How about Savinho, Jeremy Doku, and Will Dixon? Yes, since there's no new football manager, Jeremy Doku still qualifies, but barely. He'll be gone next year. Man City is closely followed by Chelsea, who's only drawn 1 of their first 6 matches, winning all of the other ones. That draw was against Aston Villa. And their goal was scored by John Duran. That's right, that man's only 21 years old in real life right now. But that crazy young collection of players at Chelsea is dominant. But the real surprise is the team that's in third, Southampton. They've been spearheaded by an absolutely rampant Kamaldeen Sulemana, who's taken advantage of the incredibly watered-down opposition to be a force. They're also, of course, rocking Taylor Harwood Bellis, who scored their first goal of the season on a set piece. As for big teams that might not be faring so well, pour one out for Newcastle, who have lost 4 of their first 6 matches. It's safe to say, based off of this quick sort of the age on their roster, that they're not necessarily a team that is built to succeed with youth. Lewis Miley, Lewis Hall, and Tino Livramento are the only players that are able to play, with their one overage player being Sandro Tonali, who they've slotted into defensive midfield. And if you want to see what's happened to the rest of these teams, there are a few guys on the transfer list. From Nick Pope to Fabian Schär to Callum Wilson to Dan Byrne, Joe Linton, Guy Maresch, Harvey Barnes. Isak is not, but his time will come. The thing is, these clubs can still actually use those overage players in European competition and stuff, so they might be encouraged to keep a couple of them, but I have to imagine that all those players are a little upset that they're not registered for the league. Sorry. The league's leading goal scorers are Cole Palmer on 7 goals already for Chelsea. This, of course, is his last year being available. And then there's Evan Ferguson, who's just getting warmed up and might turn into an absolute beast. By January 1st, Manchester City is finally getting caught up, and we had Tottenham Hotspur running top of the league with Chelsea close behind. See, Tottenham has now readjusted its team pretty successfully. Dejan Kulusevski was the one overage player that they have registered, but this is a pretty good collection of talent. Destiny Udogie, Pape Matar Sarr, Archie Gray, Lancashire obviously in his beautiful goal, but they have Bergvall and Wilson Odobert. These guys are bringing their talent to bear. Nice. I think we just end the video there. For Chelsea, their average squad is shaping up with a lot of recognizable names too, from Levi Colwill to Romeo Lavia to Carney Chukwuemeka, Cole Palmer, Noni Madueke, David Washington. I believe that's the correct pronunciation. They even got active on the transfer market, loaning in Martin Vitek from Sparta Prague. That's the type of director of football creativity you expect from a guy like Todd Bowley that loves his teams playing in a 4-4-3, baby. America! Truck, yeah! Southampton's still hanging on, but they've now slipped all the way down to 6th after 20 matches played. And Everton's overage registration of Beto is paying off as he now leads the league with 18 goals scored. And Everton's dragged its way up to 10th. In fact, I'm going to be completely honest, not quite as much parity in the league as I was hoping for. Although shout out to Ipswich, who have separated pretty comfortably away from the relegation zone, which is instead inhabited by Fulham. Now, Fulham have overage registered Emile Smith-Rowe, but this collection of talent they put on the field just hasn't quite gotten the job done. Not even appealing to Bradley DeJesus has saved them. Their goal difference is actually a rather disgusting -50 that's highlighted by losses like a 6-0 at Aston Villa, a 5-0 at Man City, a 5-0 at home against Chelsea, and a 5-0, of course, against the wagon that is Southampton. They even got smoked 5-1 at Ipswich. The other relegation teams right now are West Ham. They went with Guido Rodriguez as their overage player, but their team just generally sucks. And then, of course, there's Wolves. Now, I give them bonus points for including Harry Birtwistle of Singapore in their squad, but not even their registered registration of overage player Mateus Cunha has been able to save them. Manchester United, though. You've got Rasmus Højlund, you got Kobe Mainu, you got Lenny Yoro. They registered Matthijs de Ligt as their overage player. They have Amad Diallo, who's hurt right now. Alejandro Garnacho, who's just not selected for the team right now. He should be better than 9th, right? It's the whole point. They're building for the future. And they're running right next to an Arsenal team that's basically Declan Rice, Ricardo Calafiori, Ethan Nwaneri, and a sixpence and a barrel of wheat. They really don't know what the obsession is with exclusively Premier League reserve players having hyphenated names. I feel like every team is required to have 3 of them by law in their registration. Now there's an idea for a good video right there. But it's time to see who's going to win the first season. Because if you think we're only doing 1 season, have you ever met me? We're doing this for 5 consecutive seasons to see how the teams evolve. Come on. And the winner is... Chelsea. It's Chelsea. It turns out spending $3 billion and your soul can win you the league if you ban every player over the age of what is now 21 by the end of the season. 93 points and 31 goals from Cole Palmer. He also had 19 assists, a whopping 50 goal contributions for Cole Palmer in his only season eligible. But he didn't win the Golden Boot. That was Jeremy Doku, who had 32 goals and a second place finish for Manchester City in his only year as an eligible player. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when all these guys age out, and then it's just Evan Ferguson, a bunch of dudes that suck. And Evan scored 28 goals in his opening season as Brighton finished in 6th. Tottenham slipped all the way to 3rd because, well, Tottenham. And Aston Villa cinched up a top 4 finish. They were led, of course, by John Duran, but they also had Morgan Rogers, Rory Wilson. They registered Pau Torres as their overage player, which was probably a good move. Obviously, they finished top 4. Southampton registered a 5th place stop, and Liverpool, who we gave no credit to over the course of the season, finished 7th. Fulham was by far the worst team when you removed everybody over the age of 20. They dropped an absolutely generationally bad opening season with 12 points and a minus, hold on to your hats, 94 goal difference. Minus 94. West Ham was relegated as well, but the battle for the other spot fell pretty quickly to Ipswich Town. They collapsed over the last 18 matches and finished with just 32 points, while Wolves ended up all the way up in 14th. Crystal Palace managed to somehow keep the spirit of the club alive with the most boring finish, comfortably away from relegation, but also in no danger of accidentally ending up in European places. You have to respect that club culture. It is so consistent. And Manchester United, speaking of club culture, managed to slip its way down to 11th by somehow not winning any of its last 5 Premier League matches. But at least they've got Maurizio Sarri in as a head coach now, so I'm sure that'll get things turned around. Also, if you wanted to sprinkle a little heartbreak on Everton, just clocked that they finished behind Liverpool on goal difference for the last European place, so that's fun. Liverpool's leading goal scorer, Harvey Elliott, of course. They registered Alexi McAllister as their overage player because reasons, who knows. But they had Ryan Gravenberch and Connor Bradley that were, those are first team guys. Not that there's anything against Mateusz Mujalowski, who is their starting striker now. The second big offseason hit a huge sell-off as teams realized they weren't going to be able to keep a lot of their players. But the game was seemingly unable to recognize the registration requirements because Arsenal went out and bought Presnel Kimpembe and Brais Mendes. Those guys, they can't play. Liverpool splashed the cash for Sasha Boy, Matteo Ruggeri, and Jared Bowen. Newcastle bought Harry Maguire. But there were smart purchases as well, like Southampton was a great example. Sure, they bought Sander Berg and Marco Friedl for absolutely no reason, but then they also got Melkamu Fraundorf, Joffrey Carreras, Anesh Chardalklia. I think we're close on that one. Ethan Ennis, Masato Sasaki, all of these guys who are eligible to play. Then you got Tottenham buying Victor Lindelof. Honestly, I don't know if I can help you out with that one. But once we get into the season in year 2, a lot of the big guns have aged out. The leading goal scorer is Daniel Jebison, a now 21-year-old Canadian who has just started to make his appearances for the national team, and oh, by the way, has fired Bournemouth to the top of the league after the first 6 matches. And fortunes can change quickly when your best players are constantly aging out. Southampton went from being in Europe to all of a sudden they're bottom of the table after the first 6 matches, while Brentford's players have grown up. They're in the top 7 early. There's also, of course, the curious case of the teams that are promoted from the championship, which would be Burnley, Norwich City, and Leeds, who all have to now do without on their squad. Honestly, it might be a help though, because only one of them is in the relegation zone. Manchester City's Oscar Bobb has taken over the league with 5 assists in the first 6 matches, goals and the only player to average over an 8 rating for that stretch. But Man City they have registered Erling Haaland. They were able to keep him around for a year, and he is now the guy. He's only 3rd in best rating, though, so he's useless without service, clearly. I mean, Vedat Mariki is the overage player for Leicester City, and he's got more goals than Haaland. And Vedat Mariki would not be slowing down, because by January, he would be leading the league in goals as Leicester sit firmly in 11th, somehow with a minus 17 goal difference. They're having one of the weirdest seasons anybody's ever seen. It is 22 matches into the year, and they have not drawn. 11 wins, 11 defeats, 20 goals for Vedat Mariki. Remember where I talked about those championship clubs doing well? Well, their Leeds is bottom, Norwich City is second bottom, and Burnley is hanging on by a thread. Southampton is managing to dig its way out. Maybe it's just the experience of how to pick a team like this. But of all the big teams, the one in danger is Arsenal. See, their overage player that they registered was Presnel Kimpembe this season, and that has not done them a lot of wonders. The top of the league, though, is Newcastle. Unsung heroes that finished all the way down in a lowly 12th last year, they have completely turned their team around. Their overage player registered as Lucas Ocampos, but they've got a star on the wing in Garang Kwol, and their team has come together absolutely wonderfully. It's January 27th. Their last league loss was on November 9th. It was at Chelsea, and 2 goals from Darwin Nunez is what sunk them. Probably should have told you about that one. They bought him for $65 million and then registered him as their overage player. Just bully things, baby. Aston Villa continues to have another good season, and of course Chelsea's going to stay good, while Manchester United seems to have turned a corner now that everybody else has gotten worse. You see, they still have Højlund, Garnacho, and Kobe Mainu for this season, as well as Lini Yoro for a couple more. And despite Oscar Bob and Savinho on the wings, Manchester City has started to fall, but I wouldn't count them out just yet. Everton and Liverpool are also neck and neck once again, so maybe a recommendation to spice up the rivalry. After that goal recently, it doesn't need any spicing up. But it's time to take a look at the end of the season. The champions of Season 2 in the 20 and under Premier League, it's Newcastle. Although they were somehow almost caught by Tottenham. Newcastle finished just 2 points ahead of Chelsea, who was in 3rd. They actually at one point lost 3 consecutive matches on the run-in, and then drew their final match against Norwich City just to spice things up. That's a Norwich team that survived relegation, by the way, unlike Leeds and Burnley that are going right back down. But maybe my favorite team would be Leicester City, who managed to finish in 11th with a stunning minus 28 goal difference. I don't know. Keeping with the theme of the double last names, we had a Nathan Young-Coombs be the leading goal scorer of the league this year for Brentford. It was his final year of eligibility, but he helped lead Brentford to 6th. Unfortunately for Brentford, Man City and Bournemouth stole European spots from below them, so they're still not in Europe, but what are you going to do? Villa and Manchester United grabbed the other 2, while Arsenal and Liverpool began a quicker falling off. Maybe they just don't have as much youth talent. Concern? They finished 13th and 12th, respectively, which is not very good. And Nottingham Forest, I hadn't mentioned them this entire time. They nearly got relegated, and their goal difference was minus 52 this year, so they might be in trouble. And I gotta give them a shout out because America. But Gaga Slonina, the goalkeeper for Chelsea, won the Golden Glove. But as we get into year 3, there's one thing that I didn't necessarily predict would happen quite as much as it does. And that is Premier League players moving to other Premier League teams and then becoming their overage star. Because 5 matches into Season 3, Ollie Watkins is the league's leading goal scorer, playing with Arsenal. It's not a bad signing, honestly. But there is a surprise story brewing. Perhaps another surprise package. A dog whose year has finally come. Crystal Palace. 4 wins from their first 5, led by the superstar youngster Matheus França, who is finally of age. 7 goals in the first 5 matches. Well, Liverpool has stumbled out of the gate, and that stumbling would continue. As we carry into January, Liverpool is still sitting in 14th. But there are fortunes out there that have turned in a bigger way. Remember Aston Villa spending the first 2 years up around the top of the team? Well, those days are long gone. They're battling against relegation with Blackburn Rovers, Nottingham Forest. I told you they were in danger. And Fulham, who got promoted, apparently just to get relegated again. But a new team has taken hold at the top of the league, and that would be none other than Manchester United. It's a team that amazingly still has Kobe Mainu, Lini Yoro, Alejandro Garnacho, and has added Giorgio Scalvini on the transfer market. A very un-Manchester United brilliant piece of transfer business. They've also brought youngsters through like Chidozie Obi, who have turned into pretty darn good players considering the level of the league. In January now, they're looking like title favorites. But the well-balanced side of Newcastle is hanging in there with Gonzalo Inacio as their overage player right now. Chelsea still somehow just looks like they're actual team. It's amazing. They have brought in Nico Williams as their overage player because they got to sign a new one every season. Them's the rules. I mean, why use Darwin Nunez 2 years in a row? What a waste of opportunity. Yeah, they only bought him for $136 million. So, and then it's Crystal Palace. They're still in the top four. They're hanging in there. They have Breland Bolo as their overage player. They've brought him in to play striker. Thanks to Ollie Watkins, in large part, Arsenal's bounce back. Then Tottenham and Everton, with Manchester City's youth finally giving way a little bit. It looked like that was happening last year, and then they were freaking fine anyways. The end of the third season is a coronation for Manchester United, delivering a 97-point performance led by that incredibly talented and still very young in real life group of players that, I mean, they just had to wait for all the other good players to leave, basically. They happen to be 1 year younger. Then it's Newcastle, Tottenham, and Chelsea. Manchester City battled its way up to 6th, finishing behind Arsenal, with Wolves engineering a stunning turnaround from their near relegation to finishing in 7th. Fulham, Blackburn, and Nottingham Forest were sent down, so Fulham's still a yo-yo club, even with the new rules. And Liverpool actually finished with a negative goal difference, so that youth academy's not coming through strong right now. Crystal Palace felt a little uncomfortable being so high up the table. They ended up slipping all the way down to 10th. Your leading goal scorer? How about Francesco Pio Esposito, the striker for Newcastle? He was purchased for $2.2 million from Inter. While Wolves overage player Kefram Turam was the highest rated player in the entire league. That's a pretty good choice for an overage player also. Very well-rounded. Mateus França led the league in assists, and once again it was Gaga Slonina who won the Golden Glove. But it's worth mentioning that Manchester United's overage player was their goalkeeper, Guglielmo Vicario, and he ended up with 11 clean sheets and, oh yeah, Premier League trophy. So if you're a Manchester United fan, you just gotta wait a couple years. And also, it's clear that Tottenham, Chelsea, and Newcastle's youth has delivered in each one of these first 3 seasons. But after the first 3 years, you're really not gonna be running into a ton of players that you were familiar with beforehand. For example, a new-gen Jordan O'Loughlin became the second highest goal scorer for Southampton at the end of season 4, mainly because this dude's absolutely disgusting. But shout out to Manchester City for registering Erling Haaland as their one player again. Somehow he still isn't popping up in the Golden Boot Awards, but he had the highest average rating in the league. The leading goal scorer was Aston Villa's Rory Wilson, who, because of all the unbelievably high-level playing time in the Prem, has turned into an absolute world beater. And that helped engineer an 8th place finish for Aston Villa. Tottenham Hotspur finally gets over things in season 4 and wins the league, with Chelsea, United, and Arsenal and Newcastle right behind. Man City finished in 6th, and it feels like a lot of these teams have settled into their new norm. Southampton's amazing, explosive performances felt like a thing of the past as they were finally relegated with Burnley and Bournemouth, while Norwich had managed to stay up. That's kind of impressive. And Liverpool continued to wallow out of the spotlight. Of the few notable players remaining, Ethan Nwaneri had a very good season for Arsenal, dropping 18 assists, and he also won 9 Player of the Match awards. Miles Lewis-Skelly won 8. Arsenal title run in year 5? Nope. It was actually Tottenham again. It just took them a little while to get warmed up. But I mean, Tottenham's built a ridiculous team. They have Franco Mastantuono, Junior Kroppi, Pape Matar Sarr is their overage player, but Bergvall's still playing. Vuskovic, the really talented center back, is still eligible. Archie Gray was playing his final season in year 5. So is Mikey Moore. So Tottenham Hotspur got some dudes and some excellent transfer policy. Back-to-back titles. But United came in 2nd, then Newcastle, then Chelsea, then Arsenal. And that kid, Chidozie Aobi, ended up with 33 goals to win the Golden Boot in this season. Sunderland, West Ham, and Bristol City were relegated in the final year, and Liverpool never made it back into European play, although they were getting better, finishing in 9th. Instead, it would be Norwich City, whose deep youth academy carried them to a top 8 finish after barely surviving the year before. But we've made one important discovery that's more important than all the others. There is a way to set the rules up where Tottenham will win a trophy eventually. Congratulations to them for technically winning the save by taking the last 2 trophies, but also United, Newcastle, and Chelsea for proving that their youth academies have what it takes. If your teams didn't, I'm sorry, better luck next time. Thank you to our database wizard Coco for helping put this together, and if you want to check out the crazy new match engine mod that's taken over the FM world, or at least changes the way that Football Manager 24 feels a little bit, you can see that video right there. I linked it for you.